Every prayer you've ever whispered, every moment you've begged for help, every time you've looked at the sky and wondered if anyone's listening, you are talking to something. But according to Edgar Cayce, it wasn't what you thought it was. Not an old man on a throne, not a judge tallying your sins, not even a separate being watching from above, deciding whether you deserve mercy or punishment. What Cayce discovered in his 14,000 readings shattered every Sunday school lesson, every religious doctrine, every comfortable image humanity has created to make the infinite manageable. And once you understand what he really saw, what God really is, prayer changes. Life changes. Everything changes. Because the truth is both simpler and more staggering than any religion dared to tell you. God isn't watching you. God isn't judging you. God isn't even separate from you. And that's not New Age blasphemy. That's not spiritual rebellion. That's what Cayce, a devout Christian Sunday school teacher, discovered when his consciousness touched the source of all consciousness. When he asked the ultimate question and received an answer that made him weep, not from fear, but from recognition. You've been looking for God in temples, in books, in the sky. But Cayce found God in the last place religion told you to look. The one place that changes everything once you truly understand it. And today, you're going to understand it. The shattering discovery. Edgar Cayce didn't want to discover what he discovered. He was a traditional Christian. He taught Sunday school. He read the Bible daily. He believed what he'd been taught. God was the Father, separate, above, watching, judging. But in trance after trance, touching the Akashic records, accessing universal consciousness, something else emerged. Something that initially terrified him because it contradicted everything he thought he knew. God, the source revealed through Cayce, is not a being. God is being itself, not a consciousness. Consciousness itself, not a creator separate from creation, the creative force that becomes creation. Cayce wrestled with this. How could God not be a separate being? How could the Father that Christ spoke of not be a personality, a separate entity one could pray to, petition, please, or displease? The answer came in reading 900-227. God is the life force that animates every atom, the consciousness that experiences through every soul, the love that connects all things. You don't find God by looking up. You find God by going within, because that's where God experiences itself through you. Think about what this means. Really think about it. Every moment of your existence, you're not being watched by God. You're being experienced as God. Your consciousness isn't separate from divine consciousness. It's divine consciousness focused through the lens of your individual experience. One woman asked Cayce, "If God isn't separate, who am I praying to?" His answer changed her life. You're praying to your own highest nature, to the God that you are beneath the illusion of separation. Prayer isn't petition to another. It's alignment with what you really are. The ocean and the wave. Cayce used a metaphor that makes this radical truth graspable. The ocean and the wave. Every soul, he explained, is like a wave on an infinite ocean. The wave appears separate, has its own movement, its own apparent identity, but it's never not the ocean. It cannot be separated from the ocean. It is the ocean, expressing itself as a wave. God is the ocean. You are a wave. You appear separate, but you're made of God stuff. You move with God movement. You exist within God existence. When the wave crashes and returns to the ocean, it doesn't go somewhere else. It just remembers what it always was. This is why, Cayce revealed, you cannot be separated from God. Separation is impossible. You can forget you're the ocean, but you cannot stop being the ocean. Hell isn't separation from God. It's the illusion of separation while still being God who has forgotten itself. A minister came to Cayce, troubled by this teaching. If we're all God, why do we suffer? Why does evil exist? Why does God allow terrible things? Cayce's response was profound. God doesn't allow suffering. God experiences suffering through the parts of itself that have forgotten what they are. Every pain you feel, God feels. Every joy you experience, God experiences. You are how God knows what it's like to be human. The law, not the lawgiver. Here's where Cayce's revelation becomes even more radical. God isn't a being who created laws. God is the laws. God is the law of love, Cayce stated. Not a being who commands love, but love itself as a force, a law, a fundamental reality like gravity. You don't please or displease gravity. You align with it or suffer the consequences of misalignment. This changes everything about morality, sin, judgment. There's no angry God punishing you for breaking rules. There's simply the consequence of acting against your own nature, against the fundamental law of love that you are. Sin, Cayce explained, is simply error. It's the wave trying to move against the ocean. It creates suffering not as punishment, but as natural consequence. Like touching fire burns, not because fire is judging you, but because that's what fire does. When you hurt others, you're literally hurting yourself because there's only one consciousness experiencing through billions of perspectives. When you love others, you're loving yourself. This isn't metaphor, it's metaphysics. This is why Christ said, "Love your neighbor as yourself," Cayce revealed. Not as much as yourself, as yourself. Because at the deepest level, they are yourself, another wave in the same ocean, another expression of the same God. The Christ pattern. Now, Cayce was Christian, and what he discovered about Christ in relation to God was revolutionary. Christ wasn't God's only son. Christ was the first wave to fully remember it was the ocean while still being a wave. The Christ, Cayce explained, is the pattern, the prototype, the first to achieve complete God consciousness while in human form. Not the only Son of God, but the eldest brother showing all waves how to remember they're the ocean. This isn't diminishing Christ, it's understanding Christ's true accomplishment. He didn't come to be worshipped as the exception. He came to be followed as the example. "You will do greater things than these," he said. Why? Because you're made of the same God stuff he was. Every soul, Cayce revealed, is destined to achieve Christ consciousness, to remember fully what you are while still in form. This is the entire purpose of existence. God knowing itself through infinite experiences, then remembering itself through those same experiences. One theologian challenged Cayce. "This sounds like pantheism, like you're saying everything is God." "No," Cayce replied. "Not everything is God. Everything is in God, of God, through God. God is more than the sum of creation, but creation exists within God's being. Like your thoughts exist within your mind, but don't comprise the totality of your mind." The personal God paradox. "But I feel a personal relationship with God," people would tell Cayce. "I feel loved by something greater than me." Yes, Cayce would confirm, because the infinite can be personal. The ocean can focus itself as a wave. The whole can commune with the part. You can have a personal relationship with God because God is the person you're having the relationship with, both sides of the conversation. This is the ultimate mystical paradox. God is utterly transcendent and utterly immanent, completely beyond and completely within, the furthest star and your next heartbeat. When you pray, Cayce explained, you're not sending messages across space to a distant deity. You're aligning your wave consciousness with ocean consciousness. You're remembering what you are beneath what you appear to be. Prayer isn't changing God's mind. God doesn't have a mind separate from all minds. Prayer is changing your mind, aligning it with the divine mind you already are but have forgotten. That sense of presence you feel in deep prayer or meditation, that's not God visiting you, that's you recognizing the God you always were. The peace that passes understanding isn't sent from above. It rises from within when you stop creating the turbulence of separation. Why evil exists. The question everyone asked Cayce, if we're all God, why does evil exist? Why would God create suffering? Why would the ocean create storms that destroy its own waves? Cayce's answer reframes everything. God didn't create evil. God created free will, and free will created the possibility of evil. For God to know itself fully, it had to create the possibility of not knowing itself. Light can only know itself as light by creating the possibility of darkness. Every soul was given the ultimate gift, the freedom to forget what it is. Why? Because remembering has no meaning without forgetting. Coming home has no joy without having been away. Reunion has no sweetness without separation. Evil, Cayce explained, is simply the degree to which consciousness has forgotten its divine nature. Hitler wasn't a demon. He was God, so lost in the illusion of separation that he could commit atrocities against his own being. This isn't excusing evil. It's understanding it. Evil is severe spiritual amnesia. It's the wave believing it's separate from and superior to other waves, not recognizing they're all the same ocean. But here's the hope. No soul can remain lost forever. Every wave eventually returns to the ocean. Every prodigal eventually comes home. It might take lifetimes, eons, but every spark of God eventually remembers it's God. The purpose of existence. So why did God do this? Why did infinite consciousness fragment itself into billions of limited perspectives? Why did the ocean become waves? Cayce received a stunning answer. God desired to experience itself, to know itself, to express love and be beloved. But how can the infinite experience anything when it is everything? Only by becoming finite. Only by limitation could the unlimited know itself. You are how God experiences being human. Through your eyes, God sees. Through your pain, God learns compassion. Through your joy, God knows happiness. Through your love, God experiences being loved. This isn't a game, Cayce emphasized. It's not a test. It's not a judgment. It's God's way of experiencing every possible variation of existence. You're not being tested by God. You are God, testing the boundaries of experience. Every life is sacred not because God values it from outside, but because every life is literally God living. Every death is God experiencing transition. Every birth is God beginning a new adventure in consciousness. This is why suicide is tragic, Cayce explained. Not because God punishes it, but because it's God giving up on an experience prematurely, having to restart the lesson rather than completing it. The heaven and hell truth. What about heaven and hell? If there's no separate God judging us, what happens after death? Cayce's revelations about the afterlife shocked everyone. Heaven and hell are states of consciousness, not places. They're degrees of remembering or forgetting what you are. Heaven is consciousness fully aware of its divine nature, experiencing the bliss of unity while maintaining individuality. Hell is consciousness completely convinced of its separation, experiencing the agony of isolation that doesn't actually exist. After death, Cayce revealed, you gravitate to the level of consciousness you've achieved. Like attracts like. Those who lived in love find themselves in realms of love. Those who lived in fear find themselves in realms of fear, not as punishment, but as natural consequence. You go where your consciousness resonates. But here's the hope. Hell isn't eternal because forgetting isn't eternal. Every soul eventually remembers. Every wave eventually recognizes it's the ocean. It might take countless lifetimes, but God doesn't lose pieces of itself permanently. Eternal damnation, Cayce stated boldly, is impossible. How could God damn part of itself eternally? It would be cosmic self-mutilation. The prodigal son always comes home because home is the only thing that truly exists. What prayer really is. Understanding what God really is completely transforms prayer. You're not begging a separate being for favors. You're not trying to change God's mind. You're aligning with what you really are. True prayer, Cayce explained, is recognition. You're recognizing the God within yourself and others. You're remembering your true nature. You're aligning your wave will with ocean will. When you pray for healing, you're not asking God to intervene. You're activating the God healing force that you already are. When you pray for guidance, you're not waiting for external messages. You're quieting the ego enough to hear your own divine wisdom. This is why, Cayce revealed, prayers of gratitude are most powerful. Gratitude recognizes what already is. It aligns you with the abundance of your true nature. Begging reinforces the illusion of lack. Gratitude acknowledges the truth of infinite supply. The Lord's Prayer, Cayce noted, isn't a petition, it's an affirmation. Thy will be done isn't submission to another's will. It's recognition that divine will is your deepest will once you remember what you are. The meditation secret. Meditation, Cayce revealed, isn't about reaching God. It's about recognizing you've never been separate from God. In deep meditation, he explained, the wave remembers it's the ocean. The boundary dissolves. You experience yourself as you really are, infinite, eternal, divine. This isn't achieving something new. It's remembering something ancient. The peace you feel in meditation isn't coming from outside. It's your natural state when you stop creating the turbulence of false separation. The bliss isn't a reward. It's what you are when you're not pretending to be something else. Every soul, Cayce said, should meditate daily, not to please God, but to remember you are God, not to earn grace, but to recognize you're made of grace. But he warned, don't meditate to escape humanness. God became human to experience humanness. Meditate to bring divine consciousness into human experience, not to escape the very experience God chose to have through you. The love force. At the core of everything Cayce discovered about God was this: God is love. Not loving, not capable of love, is love. Love isn't something God does, Cayce explained. Love is what God is, the force that holds atoms together, that draws souls to each other, that makes mothers die for children. That's not powered by God. That is God in action. When you love, you're not following God's command. You're being God. When you forgive, you're not earning God's approval. You're expressing God's nature. When you serve others, you're not pleasing God. You're being God's hands in the world. This is why love heals, Cayce revealed. Love is the fundamental force of creation. It's more powerful than any disease, any karma, any curse, because love is what everything is made of. When you love someone, you're reminding their cells what they're made of. The divine amnesia. But why don't we remember this? Why don't we know we're God if we're God? Cayce revealed, the forgetting is intentional. If you knew you were God from birth, you couldn't have the human experience. You couldn't know limitation, struggle, growth, triumph. You couldn't know what it feels like to discover divinity. You'd simply be divine. The veil of forgetting isn't punishment. It's the gift that makes the journey possible. Amnesia isn't a mistake. It's the starting point of the greatest adventure possible. God discovering itself through you. Every soul, Cayce explained, is on a journey from unconscious divinity through conscious humanity to conscious divinity. You start as God who doesn't know it's God, become human seeking God, and eventually realize you were God all along. This is the hero's journey playing out in billions of souls simultaneously. Each one forgetting, seeking, and remembering. Each one a unique path for God to know itself. Comment below if this resonates with your inner knowing. Share what you've always felt about God that religion couldn't explain. Sometimes truth is recognized, not learned. The Christos within. Edgar Cayce revealed something that would have been considered heresy in his time. The Christ consciousness isn't exclusive to Jesus. It's the destiny of every soul. Jesus became Christ by fully realizing his divine nature while in human form. You're called to do the same. I and the Father are one, Jesus said. He wasn't claiming exclusive divinity. He was demonstrating inclusive divinity. He was showing what's possible when a wave fully remembers it's the ocean while still maintaining its wave form. This is the second coming, Cayce revealed boldly. Not Christ returning from clouds, but Christ consciousness awakening in humanity. The second coming is internal, not external. It's you remembering what you are. Every miracle Christ performed, Cayce explained, you're capable of. Not because you're equal to Jesus the man, but because you have access to the same Christ consciousness he accessed. The same God force that flowed through him flows through you. You just haven't remembered how to channel it yet. The religious revolution. This understanding doesn't destroy religion, it fulfills it. Every religion Cayce showed is humanity trying to remember what it is. Each one holds pieces of the truth, filtered through cultural understanding. Don't abandon your religion, Cayce advised. Understand it deeper. See past the literalism to the truth it's trying to convey. Every religion is a finger pointing at the moon. Don't worship the finger. Look where it's pointing. Christianity's Trinity, the three aspects of the one consciousness. Hinduism's many gods, the many faces of the one divine. Buddhism's emptiness, the one before it becomes many. Islam's absolute monotheism, the one that allows no separation. All religions, Cayce revealed, are rivers leading to the same ocean. They seem different because they flow through different terrain, but they're all water, all heading home, all teaching the same truth in different languages. You and God are not two. The practical application. So how does knowing this change your daily life? How does understanding what God really is transform your existence? First, you stop fearing God. How can you fear what you are? You might fear forgetting what you are, but you can't fear God any more than your wave can fear the ocean it's made of. Second, you stop begging. You don't beg yourself for what you already have. Instead, you recognize, accept, and express the divine attributes that are your birthright. Love, wisdom, creativity, joy. Third, you see everyone differently. That annoying coworker, God having a different experience. That criminal on the news, God lost in dark forgetting. That saint serving the poor, God remembering itself through service. Fourth, you take responsibility. If you're God experiencing life through your unique perspective, then your experience matters. Your choices matter. You're not a puppet. You're the divine expressing through free will. Fifth, you lose the fear of death. How can God die? You might change form like a wave returning to ocean, but you cannot cease to exist because existence itself is what you're made of. The ultimate recognition. Here's what Cayce most wanted humanity to understand. The God you've been seeking is the seeker itself. The divine you've been praying to is the one praying. The love you've been desperate to receive is the love you're capable of giving. You haven't been abandoned by God. You are God experiencing what abandonment feels like. You haven't been judged by God. You are God learning what judgment creates. You haven't been loved by God. You are God discovering what love is through experiencing and expressing it. The kingdom of heaven is within, Christ said. He meant it literally. Not that heaven is inside your body, but that heaven is your true nature when you remember what you are. Every spiritual teaching Cayce showed is trying to wake you up to this one truth. You're not a human seeking God. You're God having a human experience. You're not trying to get somewhere. You're already there, dreaming you're on a journey. The return home. The entire spiritual path, all of religion, all of seeking, Cayce revealed, is simply the journey home to what you've never actually left. You're already in the ocean, dreaming you're a separate wave, slowly waking up to the wetness that proves you never left the water. Enlightenment, Cayce explained, isn't gaining something new. It's losing something false, the illusion of separation. It's not becoming divine. It's remembering you always were. And here's the beautiful paradox. Even after remembering, you can choose to continue being a wave, playing in form, experiencing the divine play of existence. But now you play consciously, knowing it's play, knowing you're safe, knowing you're eternal. This is why souls reincarnate even after enlightenment, Cayce revealed. Not from karma, but from love. God so loves experiencing that it returns again and again, each time a new adventure, a new perspective, a new way of knowing itself. The final truth. As we end, let me leave you with what Cayce considered the most important thing to remember about what God really is. God isn't disappointed in you. God isn't angry with you. God isn't testing you. God isn't judging you. God is being you, experiencing through you, learning as you, growing with you, celebrating your joys, feeling your sorrows, walking every step of your journey not beside you but as you. You've never been alone because alone is impossible. You've never been abandoned because abandonment is illusion. You've never been unloved because you're made of love itself. The God you were taught about, separate, distant, judgmental, was humanity's attempt to understand the incomprehensible. But the God Cayce discovered, intimate, immediate, identical with your deepest self. This is the truth mystics have always known and religions have always hidden. You don't need to earn God's love. You are God's love in form. You don't need to seek God's will. Your deepest will is God's will. You don't need to fear God's judgment. God doesn't judge the dance. It's dancing. If this truth resonates in your soul, share it with others who are ready. Subscribe to go deeper into these mysteries. Comment with your own recognition of what you've always known but religion never confirmed. The search is over. Not because you found God, but because you recognize that the seeker and the sought were always one. The wave has remembered it's the ocean. The dreamer is awakening to what it really is. And what you really are is so much grander than any religion dared tell you. You're not God's child. You're God playing at being human. You're not God's servant. You're God serving through human hands. You're not trying to reach God. You're God reaching for itself through the illusion of separation. This isn't blasphemy. This isn't ego. This is the ultimate humility, recognizing that any greatness you achieve is God, any love you express is God, any wisdom you share is God remembering itself through you. Welcome home to what you've always been. Welcome to the truth that sets you free. Welcome to the recognition that you and God are not two, have never been two, could never be two. You are the wave, made of ocean, playing at being separate, slowly remembering your water, and in that remembrance finding the peace you've always sought. Because the peace was never outside you, the love was never beyond you. God was never absent, you were just looking in the wrong direction, outward, when the divine has always been within, as close as your next breath, as intimate as your next heartbeat, as present as the awareness reading these words right now. That awareness, that's God, knowing itself through you. And now you know it too.